Saw this story a couple of different places this week, and it's a bit of a head-scratcher for me. The headline on one Toronto paper says, Tories spend 5 times more on stimulus ads than on flu awareness. So they're spending a lot more of my money to tell me that they're spending my money than they're spending my money to tell me how to help prevent this pending pandemic. Some say that we shouldn't be using tax dollars at all for what is considered a partisan agenda. Now, they can argue 6 ways to Sunday that this is, in fact, what they're doing or not doing as a partisan agenda. It's not, to me, it's no different than during the Mike Harris years when we saw those highway signs, your tax dollars at work. Well, we knew that. We could see the equipment. We knew they were at work. How obvious do we have to be at this? How much of an education process do we need? And if we need that level of education, shouldn't it be on something that we can control, the spread of this potential pandemic? I'm a little confused. Gerry Nicholls joins the show. Gerry is a political commentator. You'll read his stuff in a variety of newspapers, and he's got a new title these days. He's the president of Libertas Post. LibertasPost.com is the website. That's linked from our show page. He joins the show again. How are you?
I'm excellent, Gary. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, but explain this to me. Is this not partisan spending?
Well, yeah, I think you said it very well, Gary. They're spending money to tell us they're spending our money. And if you look at these ads, and I've seen them on television, I'm sure everyone has seen them on television, where they have these people extolling the economic action plan, praising the fact that it's creating jobs and putting us on the right track and all this kind of stuff. When I first saw that ad, I actually thought it was a Tory partisan ad. I was waiting for the Conservative Party logo to come up at the end of it. Instead, it was the Government of Canada website. And if you go to that website, what do you see there? Well, all kinds of pictures of Stephen Harper talking about the Harper government, people extolling the economic action plan again. So it's clearly, this is partisan rhetoric, it's government propaganda. And that's not only a waste of tax dollars, Gary, but it's also undemocratic, because essentially what you're doing is you're forcing people through their taxes to support a political agenda, and that's wrong.
If you want to know if it's a Conservative Party ad, I think you have to look for Michael Ignatieff in them.
That's right. And I don't want to put all the blame on the Tories for this. The Liberals did the same thing when they were in power. It's just, they had this opportunity to do, quote-unquote informational advertising, but they can't resist sticking a partisan message on there. They can't resist using tax dollars to sort of toot their own horn. And as I said, that's just wrong, and it's something that should be stopped.
Well, okay, so if it's stopped, then again, who draws up those lines? Because even if we have lines, Gerry, somebody smarter than I knows how to cross it without getting caught.
Well, that's, again, you touched on it. This is a problem. How do you define what is purely an informational ad between what is that crosses that line into political rhetoric? Now, I would argue these Tory ads, they're indefensible. I think anybody looking at them would realize that this is partisan. But sometimes it's not so clear-cut. And I think you have to put in place some kind of regulation, some kind of guidelines, or perhaps put somebody in charge of looking at these ads and sort of vetting them and saying, like, these are not partisan. I know here in Ontario, one of the few good things Dalton McGuinty did was he did pass such a law which banned government using partisan advertising. For instance, in Ontario, the Premier cannot show up in government ads because that would be seen as being partisan. So I'm not sure exactly what the answer is, Gary, but I think we have to do something to stop this kind of thing from happening.
Are we talking about the difference between persuading and informing?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. You talked about the ads about the flu epidemic. I suppose there is some legitimate purpose there for the government to spend money on advertisements telling people what to do to protect themselves from this. That's probably legitimate. But if they were to run, ads saying Stephen Harper thinks the swine flu is bad, and our government's doing all these wonderful things, I think that crosses the line. Then you're talking about using tax dollars to promote a political agenda or a political personality. And again, this is not what we should be doing. This is not what the government should be doing. They should be using our money not to promote themselves, but to do what's right for the country.
Well, I guess when I see the numbers, I get a little nervous because we're all, people are without work. We're coming out of the recession. I know we're doing better than some countries. But then I see the numbers like the federal government has spent $34 million of our money on these particular sets of ads. And I think, that $34 million could go a long way in another area where it's needed, and that would show me that my tax dollars are working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that bothers me about it is sort of the hypocrisy of it. I mean, I spent a lot of my life fighting against what I call election gag laws, which are laws which are basically put extreme limitations on how much citizens or groups can spend on political advertising. I know we've talked about it on your show in the past. And the reason the government justifies these laws is they don't want money to buy votes, right?
Yeah.
And here they are spending tax dollars, basically, to buy votes. So the hypocrisy is really mind-boggling. And, yeah, it is also, as you said, it is a waste of money. That money could be used, I think, for much more productive purposes than just sort of, waving the Tory flag across the country at the taxpayer's expense.
So this is the question I have for my audience. I think you've done a pretty good job narrowing it down for me, but is it wrong for the government to advertise to tell us what they're doing? Is that wrong?
I think, depending on how they phrase it, depending on how they market it, it can be wrong, and I think what's going on right now is wrong.